Welcome and thanks for listening to another episode of Zero Cafe. Today I speak with Marta Florentyna Saratowicz, data analyst at Pandora, and one of the things we'll be talking about is the hot topic of the moment, namely intelligent tracking protection. My name is Gideon and welcome to Zero Cafe, the podcast where I show you the behind the scenes of optimization teams and talk with their specialists about data and human-driven optimization and implementing a culture of experimentation and validation. This episode of Zero Cafe is made possible by our partners Online Dialogue, SiteSpect, Content Square, and Convert.com. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 9. So, Marta, welcome and great talking to you again. Could you start off by giving us a quick introduction to your background and how you started out with optimization?
A little bit about myself. I'm a Polish expat. I'm living in Copenhagen. I've been here for the last 9 years. Beforehand, I've been traveling around Europe and spent some time in Middle East, doing everything from that was contained previously in the term digital marketing, trying to get some experience as a student, first in Sevilla in Spain. Then I was posted for half a year in Poland. So I would like to think about myself as an analyst with international experience. So on a daily basis, I'm working as a digital analyst and data activation manager. Beforehand, I was based in strictly analytics agency that was based on data from the start to an end, basically. All the machine learning and data analytics departments were supporting conversion rate optimization, PPC, and SEO departments. So that was the core of the business. While now working mostly with media agencies and supporting them with data in order to optimize their media buying efforts.
Okay, and what the rest of the company do? What kind of services do you provide?
So that's everything in terms of media. So we start with traditional media. So they actually book advert time on radio and TV, but that's only the traditional part that's being scaled down now, because obviously most of the clients would like to advertise online. So there is a department that's doing the media buying on social media and driving a lot of traffic into the sites. There is also a couple of departments that do pool media strategies, so pool marketing strategies, meaning that they will do optimization of search results as well as some paid search ads in order to pull users into the websites. Actually is interesting is that the conversion rate optimization department does not exist as a department in here, but each of the media agency has a conversion rate specialist working and dedicated for that specific department.
Okay.
So, for example, what we do in web analytics department is that we work with implementation of the KPI strategies and then tracking, and focus on quantitative data in order to provide some optimization insights. Very recently, I teamed up with a qualitative person, so to speak, from one of the media agencies, and we work together on aligning our approaches, so combining data with hypothesis making, as well as pulling quite a lot of web analytics into analyzing A/B tests. So that's what we are actually planning now, and we've done a couple of pitches together where the clients were super interested in this combined approach, because what we would normally see is that the conversion rate optimization specialists are rather on the kind of softer side of the spectrum. They're not specifically data-driven, some of the decisions might be actually taken based on gut feeling or just the perception of what actually looks good and should be done in a certain way in order to optimize user clicking on a specific button, a click-through rate, or a final conversion if it's an e-commerce store, that will be a transaction. So we try to combine those two approaches and actually use mostly e-commerce data and visualizing this e-commerce data to be able to find what might be wrong in an online store. And based on the data that I would prepare, she would then use it into her hypothesis building.
Yeah, those challenges sound very familiar.
Yeah, right. So, well, I would say that that's the most optimal result is actually teaming up across different departments and, building conversion rate optimization teams from employees that represent different approach to the same problem. That's what I find more useful than just building hypotheses based on gut feeling. We need to remember that not all users are us, basically. So we might have completely different perception, especially as digital specialists, than people who've never been on a specific site. They don't know what it's for. They are not sure of what is the purpose of it. So we need to remember about the user at the very end. That's how we actually teamed up so this conversion rate optimization specialist, her focus is on the user. And obviously, being data analyst, my focus is also on the user.
Was there a specific reason that you moved to Denmark? Was it is the industry different there?
Well, so before I actually moved to Denmark, I moved here to do the studies because, maybe the education system in Poland that's based on learning things by heart is not the best if you really like to understand stuff. Mm-hmm. So the practical approach of education to education in Denmark was something that caught my attention. I packed my suitcase and then hopped on a board of a plane, and then I arrived in Denmark.
Okay.
And I'm here almost ever since. I had a couple of periods when I was traveling around Europe and gaining some experience in here and also in Dubai during this time that I'm here. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it was just the way that people learn stuff in here that caught my attention and made me move.
And I think culture-wise, it's very similar to the Netherlands. Also, mm-hmm. How people buy online and regarding regulations, I think. But you said before we started recording, you said there are quite some differences still between Denmark and the Netherlands, right? In terms of CRO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well. What I can say is that every talk during the Digital Analytics Congress last week had some elements in conversion rate optimization, as if a Dutch way would be focus on the first-party data and whatever we can gather on the website, and then try to regain control over our own channel or our own platforms in order to make them the most optimized towards the users. While as I see it, the recent trends in Denmark are rather combining different sources of data in order to provide better usability across the whole journey. There is a big focus on combining offline and online data or conversions in store, so those offline conversions with online behavior. So there is a different approach to what data is actually being used. And as I see it, it impacts how we do conversion rate optimization.
You just mentioned you were a speaker there. And you did a session on how to cope with intelligent tracking prevention. And that seems to be quite a hot topic nowadays, and it's very important. Can you explain for those that haven't encountered ITP yet what it is and why it's important?
Well, that's a lot of new information. Well, as I like to think about it, it all started with a standard war. So a standard war would be a competition for market dominance or survival between the two companies that produce a particular type of technology. And that's one thing. And another thing is that it started because, in my opinion at least, Apple was so drawn into designing and manufacturing devices that they kind of slept through this whole phase where Amazon or Google or Facebook started to actually capitalize on providing platforms for advertising and using data for that. So these two factors kind of shaped how the industry turned, with Apple just wanting to basically end the dominance of Google and Facebook, and Amazon saying, well, if you guys build your whole empires on advertising cookies and analytics cookies, then we will make sure that 1/3 of the market that's using our browser, that you cannot capitalize on those people who are using our browsers. So from one point, it is standard war, and from another point of view, it's just those four digital giants trying to outmaneuver each other's. So that was something that shaped a recent landscape.
SiteSpect biedt wereldwijd een unieke AB-testing, personalisatie en product recommendation oplossing. SiteSpect werkt server-side, dus zonder tags of scripts, waardoor een optimale performance gegarandeerd is. De SiteSpect-oplossing elimineert vertragingen en kans op flikkereffecten. Tevens zorgt deze aanpak ervoor dat de huidige en toekomstige browser security-regels zoals ITP en ETP geen impact hebben op het AB-testen en personaliseren met SiteSpect. Voor meer informatie hierover ga je naar sitespect.com. And those four giants being Google, Apple, Firefox or /Mozilla, and Microsoft.
Yeah, well, that is to be said within the browsers. I mean, the whole battle is about the browsers, but I believe that the motivation towards limiting tracking and data sharing opportunities, it extends far beyond who has the biggest market share within browsers, because ultimately what I think happened is that Apple was, as I said, so drawn into building devices, the physical devices, that they disregarded the importance of data, and now they woke up and got to know that they are getting outmaneuvered.
Yeah.
So the way that they would like to put a strain into, Google and Facebook capitalizing on them providing the devices would be just to put an end to where the revenue streams are being driven from, which means from online advertising and the use of data.
Yeah. And by the way, looking at the browser market share, I just pulled up some numbers from StatCounter. And those numbers are very stable. If I look at it, those numbers are from September last year until September this year, and it's basically around 55% Chrome, 26% Safari, and then actually Samsung browsers. So mobile browsers, I would assume, and then 5% Firefox, and then 4.5% Edge, and around 3% Internet Explorer. So it's mainly Chrome and Safari that are the dominant players here in the Netherlands.
Yeah, we have our 25% of market share of Safari, which is an Apple browser. So what they've actually done is that they removed 1/4 of the market from being able to be advertised to by Google and Facebook. So what actually Apple has done is that they've at the beginning they limited the advertising cookies, and then they removed them completely. So right now, when you're not, nobody's being able to target you on a Safari browser. If you're on, let's say, Google.com, or if you are reading the news, nobody who's advertising through Google's channels, through Google's platforms, is able to target you, because your browser does not allow any advertising cookies to be set. And, me working in a media agency that produces some kind of a challenge where we have smaller reach of our campaigns, just because those users are denying cookies by default. But obviously there are ways to circumvent that. But on the other hand, being an analyst and getting to know that the first-party cookies are also capped within 24 hours, it means that the cookie will expire after 24 hours since the date it's been set. So that would mean if you would come back to my website more than 24 hours, within more than 24 hours, I will not be able to recognize that you're the same user. And I don't really care about the advertising cookies. I care about the first-party cookies that are screwing up my traffic. Because ultimately then I'm not even able to report on the channel split, because a single user might have one conversion, but suddenly you would have two sessions and it would be two users. I'm this kind of person that really likes order in data and really cares about data quality. Yeah. So this kind of ruins my whole world.
Yeah, I think many CRO specialists will relate to that statement. We like to have order in our data.
Yeah. So in May 2019, this capping of first-party cookies been introduced by Safari. And what happened next in September is that Firefox actually followed through, and they capped all third-party cookies by default. So you're not even able to advertise to those people who are using Safari now. There were some temporary solutions. People, many specialists actually were recommending to hide the solution, to hide the cookies from this algorithm that was eradicating cookies. The easiest solution was just a piece of a code that appends your cookies to a local storage. But then at the end of September, what Safari's done, they actually disabled this function of being able to store anything in the local storage. I'm not sure that's what they actually done, but you're not able to store your cookies there because they can be accessed in there by the cookie scraping algorithm.
Yeah.
So, well, we've got a problem. I need to say that.
Yeah. So as a CRO specialist working for an agency or if you're working on the merchant side, how can you figure out how big this problem is for you? How much data you are missing?
Right. So I would actually recommend to do a couple of analysis. First of all, Apple products are really popular in Denmark. If you're based in another European country, that might be completely different. But what we see in Denmark, that 40 to 60% of all the browsers are based in Apple devices. So you can have half of your traffic consisting of Chrome and probably Opera and Samsung and Internet Explorer, while the other half is Safari. So you need to look at the split of different browsers you have. And second of all, I would actually look into if the Safari and Firefox browsers, what type of browsers, what versions are those? Because if your users are still using very old versions of Safari, then your traffic should not be impacted. But with version 12.1, this actually has been rolled out, and we've seen from mid-May 3/4 of all Safari traffic being actually from the impacted browsers, from the impacted versions.
Yeah.
Then what you could do is you could see a trend line of how big of a percentage of all your sessions are the new sessions. And then if you draw a linear trend line on the percentage of new sessions, what it normally would show for the clients in Denmark that in January, maybe 30 to 40% of all sessions from the impacted browsers, that it was about 30% of new users. Right now in September, what we see, it's about 50%. And I'm not really sure that this is because there's more new users being targeted by our campaigns. I would rather say that it's because they come from these impacted versions of these impacted browsers, and they're just screwing up my data.
Exactly.
Then what you could also do is you could look into the split of the transactions. So first of all, you do two segments. One segment of impacted browsers and another segment of those browsers that were not impacted. And then go to your e-commerce report, see how this performs for new and existing users. And then with your two segments applied, you'll be able to actually see what's the difference in between new visitors coming from these impacted browsers and non-impacted.
Yep.
Because that's, that would actually tell you that that you cannot really trust your transactions. I mean, at the end, there will be just one transaction that occurred, but your conversion rate would not be.
Yeah, and I guess that's also quite dependent on your type of business, right? If you're selling something that most people buy within 24 hours, then you should be relatively okay. But if people take a week or longer, well, if they take it longer than a day, then you have a problem. And then people start, your data starts to be screwed up.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just grocery shopping, then you are able to make a decision of which cucumber to buy within 24 hours. But any business that's selling cars or selling apartments or generating leads for more expensive type of services, I would assume that those decisions take longer to make than buying a cucumber.
Yep.
So those businesses will naturally be more impacted.
Exactly.
And once we are on this point that maybe it's time to stop calling conversion rate optimization, because as we know, the rate is actually based on a session that now we basically cannot trust. So maybe we should call it just conversion optimization.
Online Dialog is al 10 jaar een toonaangevend CRO-bureau waar mensen, kwaliteit en kennisoverdracht centraal staan. Ze zijn een specialist omdat ze zich alleen richten op optimalisatie en klantgedrag. Het team zorgt voor online groei en waardevolle inzichten in je bezoekers en optimaliseren samen met jou de verschillende onderdelen van je CRO-programma, zoals websites, sales funnels en customer journeys. Voor meer info ga je naar onlinedialog.nl.
Yeah, or there are a lot of proposed terms, I think, that are trying to improve on this. But it's such a well-known term by now that's really hard to change, I guess. Yeah, a lot of people suggested that we should change the name of the podcast. But I also usually try to explain to people that it's not about a single KPI that we're going for. And it's more about the mindset of a company, of running experiments, validating the changes that you make, and looking at the whole customer journey and not just the conversion rate of people buying something online and then ignoring everything else. But yeah, there's definitely a branding / marketing challenge that we have as an industry. You also spoke about, now we know what the problem is, and we know somehow how to figure out how big the problem is for your own shop specifically. So what can you do? I think during your session you spoke about two types of optimization, right? Optimizing reach and optimizing performance. So let's talk about optimizing reach first.
Right. So what we can do, and it can be a very radical thing to do, is that if we don't want to drain our marketing budget on trying to reach people that we cannot reach anymore, let's just exclude them. If we're running any type of a campaign in Google Ads or DV360 ad form, we should just exclude Safari and Firefox browsers from targeting. I know that it might be painful, and if getting the widest reach possible is on top of your marketing strategy, then it might be painful, and maybe it's time to rethink the strategy.
Yeah, and if other browsers follow suit, then you might have a big problem in the near future, right? If all follow, then...
But I would not assume that this is actually going to happen until we have another solution in place.
Okay.
Obviously, what we should be doing for a number of years now is gathering user IDs. Because we will not be able to optimize any business in the future, so to speak, if we are not able to identify our users. If our business, we want to make business online, but if our business that does not provide value for which a customer would like to pay, and thus being able to register and log in, then we in the future won't be able to recognize those users anymore, and we won't be able to target them. It means that we need to adapt the marketing strategies, and sometimes we need to also adapt the way that we actually are running business. Aside of user IDs, it might be worth looking into building an app, because the SDKs are not based on cookies, they are based on device ID. Because ultimately what do you do when you download an app? You use your own account on Google or Apple and your own device in order to download this app. And then the data is actually being tied to your device, and you cannot change the device ID as far as I'm concerned. So being able to gather device IDs of our users will also bring us some opportunities to target them based upon those device IDs. Obviously, that's a big technical change, and well, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to have an app, but maybe it's time to reconsider and then start tracking user IDs and device IDs. What you could also do with this data is that there is a couple of solutions, technical solutions that are based on stitching device IDs and user IDs. Let's take a scenario that the same user with my login credential to an online store, and I'm using my account on 3 different devices. I usually log in on my desktop, I log in on my phone, and I'm logging on my tablet. And then I also might have another phone that I use for work, but sometimes I actually look at the online store on my work phone as well. And that will give us the four different devices. But because I'm logged in with the same account, that will give me just one user ID. Employing this data in any type of database would then give you an opportunity to stitch those 4 devices to a single user. That will give you some insights about my behavior. Maybe I'm using the phone in the morning and maybe using desktop in the afternoon. And also, based on which device I'm using at what time, that will give you some targeting ideas. Maybe it will be better to push a display banner to me based on a device ID on my phone when you know that I added stuff to the cart but did not convert. And maybe at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm actually on doing my daily commute back to home. So maybe it's a great time to actually make a purchase. So rethinking our marketing strategies with those device IDs and user IDs would actually be needed to find a suitable solution for the future.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we are talking about the technical solutions and not necessarily adapting our whole business, the only viable solution for now, especially if we have multiple domains, is storing cookies server side. And I know that there are many concerns about if it's GDPR compliant, but I would assume that as long as we don't have a lawsuit against a company who's actually storing cookies server side, we would not know if this is actually a legitimate interest of the company to preserve the cookies, or if it's actually, impacting the rights of the data subject.
Okay, and for sending those cross-domain tracking or those user IDs, it does require clients to either log in, or at least they need to have some continuous flow of data, right?
Right. And about that, I've always been a fan of actually just having single Google Analytics property that would aggregate all the traffic. Yeah. I know that maybe a threshold is a bit too low if you're running an online business across many, for example, European countries, that the threshold and the hit quota might be too low to actually be able to, send the data to one place. But ultimately what it does is that it says the same cookie ID, because it's still based on cookies, but it sets the same cookie ID across different domains and across different devices. So that was always my preferred way. Now, if we consider Google's environment and the way that they've handled merging app and web data, this is actually being done with the new type of property. It's been live since August in beta. And over there, you can actually target your Firebase project to send data to this property, as well as from Google Tag Manager, send your data, your website data to the same property. And the stitching, I need to emphasize that it's still in beta, but the stitching that's being done in there is being done basically on device IDs and user IDs. There is another solution provided by Tilium. In Audience Stream, you're able to determine what is the user identifier, and then being able to stitch different sessions containing different cookies together based on this identifier, and that's called profile stitching within Audience Stream. And this solution has been in place for quite some time. Obviously, if they are also able to gather information from the app. So if you're sending device ID, that can also form one of the stitching points.
And do you know how well that works? Are there any downsides or any drawbacks of that?
Well, any drawback I can actually see, because the Google's solution is still in beta. They advise the users, especially, and like the end users, the companies, to actually start, building on this feature, and they've been working on developing the Firebase tracking for quite some time now. So that's been on a timeline, but I would say that if it's still in beta, it's not ready yet. I assume that they need to gain some critical mass of users before their algorithms that are actually stitching that are able to, certify that this is 100% foolproof.
Okay.
While the Tilium solution, it's been in place for a couple of years now, and I've actually set it up once. I've seen it working. It's pretty awesome. Ultimately, they're also pretty agnostic, so we could point also your Google Analytics data over there and collect data through Firebase into Audience Stream, Tilium's Audience Stream, and that would work on the same principle.
Okay.
So it depends on the marketing landscape, because on the MarTech stack as well, because it depends what preferred vendor you've got. So you might be a patchwork of different systems, and then you like a vendor that's doing the stitching to be as agnostic as possible. While if you're 100% drawn into Google stack, then it's best to just stay within Google stack. Start stitching your device IDs and user IDs now, and then leverage it later on.
Werk je aan een front-end AB-test en heb je ook last van de bekende flikkeringen in je variaties? Dit kan natuurlijk je testresultaten beïnvloeden en een positief testresultaat neutraliseren. Probeer Convert.com's AB-testing software die Smart Insert technologie gebruikt en die flikkeringen voorkomt. 5 keer snellere support via 24/7 chat, de helft goedkoper en het bedrijf is daarnaast maar liefst 15 keer carbon positive. Je doet dus jezelf, je bedrijf en de volgende generatie een plezier door hun website convert.com/sneller eens te bezoeken.
Yeah, and I guess most of us are stuck in the Google stack. I think that's what most of us are using, and most of the clients at least are using. So that's about optimizing reach, and then the second part, optimizing performance.
Right. So, given that we have 24 hours to make people convert, let's find out what prevents them from converting. Let's eliminate that friction as fast as possible. And later on, let's hope for the best. Maybe people usually, like conversion rate optimization, they also always focus on success. We need to optimize our conversion rate. We need to, decrease the bounce rate, increase the engagement. But at the very end, maybe it's a very small, annoying detail that's preventing users from actually converting. Back on Measure Camp in May in Rome, one of the conversion rate / web analytics specialists from Finland was present. His name is Mikko, and he actually outlined this couple of metrics that you can use to measure how annoyed or irritated your users are.
Yeah.
So, for example, he suggested measuring number of clicks per page view. And I know it's from my own experience. When I'm super annoyed, I would just try to make the website respond, and I would click around many times repeatedly and be super angry. And then using this metric together with the page views, the page reports in Google Analytics, we can actually see that maybe some page is simply not responsive, or maybe the user just cannot click on proceed to checkout because the feature is not responsive, there is no link under it. It might be a very simple thing that's super annoying, and it might have a tremendous effect on just fixing this, pinpointing this really annoying thing, and then fixing this specific thing. I remember I downloaded an app when I was visiting my parents in Warsaw. We were supposed to go on a trip on bikes, on city bikes. But the way that the app was scaled did not fit my crappy Chinese phone. So I was not able to actually fill out my details.
Okay.
And we spent around 2 hours them waiting for me, like my whole family on bikes, like, can we go now? And me not being able to actually, register in order to be able to pick the city bike up. So just measuring this number of, frustrated, annoyed clicks on a screen view or a page view could give us a lot of insights. Then what Mikko also suggested is that we can also track the confusion of our users. So just dividing the amount of page views by unique page views would give us the confusion rate. It will show us if our users are within a single session going back and forth again, or maybe a specific page does not provide them with the information that they need, or they just simply are not able to find a specific information they want. A good example for a commercial client would be that scrolling through a page where you're supposed to fill out something actually scrolls your scrolls your form as well, so that you just cannot catch it because it's just moving around as you scroll, so to speak. And it's also super annoying. And then this user would be not able to find a form to fill out, for example, the address, and would be walking back and forth within the checkout funnel and not being able to provide address. Yep. That's obviously a very, enlarged case of what can be wrong. But if a thing like that exists, that will have tremendous effects on the conversion rate at the very end.
I think those are great tips, right? And I know some of the analytics tools, they also try to measure annoyance and confusion. I think those are particularly fun, useful things to be tracking. And the way you set them up, I think those are very useful and easy to set up, right? And very useful to detect pages or users that are getting frustrated easily.
Yeah. There is also another thing, because sometimes we know that there's something wrong with our checkout, but maybe if we work on the client side, we're not able to get resources. We would be normally called off saying, well, the sales are flowing in, so you ain't fixing something that's not broken. Or maybe we're not going to give you our precious developers time to figure out what is broken. So what I would normally suggest is to track what we call a missed revenue. So normally with the e-commerce tracking, we have our revenue, but maybe if we also track the full price of products in checkout across the whole checkout flow, and then subtract that from the total revenue, or the other way around, and we would know how much revenue we actually missed.
Yeah.
And on the next meeting, where we had to fight for resources with another department, and we are a conversion rate optimization specialist, we can just present this one number per month or per week, saying that we are losing thousands of euros just because you're not willing to give us assistance of developers to find out what's wrong. So we could actually use this missed revenue metric as a form of internal buy-in. And I like this idea very much. I think it's tremendous, because it actually would show everyone that our preconception of our knowing that something is wrong can actually be quantified in a way that speaks out to top management very well, because we are just talking about money that we're never going to be able to earn.
Exactly, and I think that's a great thing that we can do in general with conversion optimization, right? If we run experiments and we see the difference that it makes, but then it's maybe not implemented, we can just present to the board or whoever is in charge, saying, okay, we're losing this amount of money every month because you cannot implement it, or you won't implement it. It's up to you.
Oh, right.
It's fine, but it's fine. It's your choice.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Also as you said, for missing implementation. I know that sometimes, development projects, they get stalled along the way, and it takes for ages to actually have something implemented or new websites rolled out. And tracking of missed revenue also provides this sense of urgency, saying that we have to fix it as fast as possible, because that's a big drain of our budget.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you're buying a lot of traffic that's not being able to go through. So if you're combining this reach and performance strategies together, and you're buying crazy amount of traffic, it's super expensive, you send them through this checkout funnel, but they are dropping, along the way, then just being able to recalculate that into a missed revenue would be, a pretty pretty big thing.
Yeah. So would it be like a standard dashboard that you usually set up to show missed revenue, or?
Yeah. Well, what I would normally do is that I'm a big fan of dashboards, especially if we want to achieve something. And what I would normally do is I would fire a goal per a checkout step or per e-commerce action in separate Google Analytics view. Then I would send this data from this specific event tracking /goal /e-commerce tracking view into Data Studio, and I would recalculate the drop-off rates in between different steps of a checkout funnel or just the whole e-commerce flow. And doing that in Data Studio and based on the goals allow us for segmenting that data with more dimensions. And we can obviously send our missed revenue on with each of the steps.
Yeah.
And that I find it sends a pretty powerful message, because then we'll be able to allocate on which step are we actually losing the most of revenue, and kind of pinpoint maybe there is a specific device that's responsible for that, or maybe there is a specific channel responsible for that. And then we can use all of our custom dimensions as well. So
yeah, but for those dashboards for missed revenue, usually you need to do some assumptions for that, right? Like external factors staying the same, and when you implement it, it might not actually bring the revenue that you predicted. So how do you handle that internally, and managing expectations on that front?
Well, and then that's the problem, because then we need to start hypothesizing, because we might know that something is wrong, but we might not be sure what exactly is wrong. And that's where, more humane people would actually step in, like my conversion rate optimization colleague. And we would look into data together, and then we would also debug the checkout flow probably, or the whole e-commerce setup. On site. And what's the most interesting is you could also support this data in a way that you sit with someone who'd never been on a page, and then you just ask them to make a purchase of a product, and then you set up a screen recording on that. And when you're sitting next to the person, you might actually experience what it's like to do it for the first time. Because if you would just set up screen recording with Hotjar, then you don't know if these people are first time there. Do they maybe browse from different device? Are they acquainted with the brand or not? So doing these peer-to-peer reviews, it's actually very valuable, and that can support your analysis along the way.
I think that's a great note to end our recording. Thanks so much, Marta. I think that's a lot of food for thought for us to think about in the CRO industry. Maybe in a couple of maybe months, but probably years, we can figure out a better way to call our industry besides CRO. Thanks so much.
That would be interesting. Yes, you're very welcome, and thank you for the invitation as well.
You're welcome, and talk to you soon.
Terrific, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Marta, thank you so much for the interview, and talk to you soon. This was Season 2, Episode 9 of CRO Café with Marta Florentyna Saratowicz from Pandora. And as always, the show notes can be found on our website, cro.cafe. This podcast is currently still mainly in Dutch, but if you're interested in our English episodes, please go to cro.cafe/English to see an overview of our English episodes and to subscribe to get notified about upcoming English episodes. If you're interested in promoting your products or services to the best CRO podcast listeners in the world, please take a look at cro.cafe/partner to see how we can collaborate. Next week, another Dutch episode where I talk to Joris Brion, founder and CEO of Dexter Agency, and we talk about how he is running a remote optimization agency, and we talk about how to sell CRO to clients. Talk to you then, and always be optimizing.